People in America knew him as Archie Bunker, but in 1995, Carroll O'Connor got a call. The four-time Emmy winner disappeared overnight after a phone call that changed everything. Hollywood's biggest star was all of a sudden seen in courtrooms instead of being on set. He went up against drug dealers in person. Laws in 17 states, but what hurt America's favorite father figure so much that he give up the spotlight for good? The answer may surprise you. Carroll O'Connor was born in Manhattan on August 2, 1924. His family had deep Irish Catholic roots. His dad, Edward, worked as a lawyer, and his mother, Elise, was a teacher. Carroll was the oldest of 3 children. Hugh, one of the boys, would later die in a motorcycle accident in 1961. The other, Robert, went to New York to become a psychiatrist. Put a lot of value on education. That upbringing was rooted in Carroll's life, was shaped by Irish and Catholic values, which would also show up in the roles he played later on. The Great Depression broke up a lot of American families, but Carroll grew up in Forest Hills, Queens, which is a long way from being poor. His dad's law business kept going, and the family lived in a nice single-family home. Forest Hills was a planned upper-class neighborhood with clean streets and big yards. Tudor-style homes. The unemployment rate in the U.S. had reached 25%. However, Carroll was safe from it. He never went hungry or lost his home. Years later, when he had to play a working-class man, comfort stood out. Characters. He knew about the social gap not just from reading about it. Carroll's family lived on one side of the country while the rest of the country fell apart. Things didn't go well at the start of school. He skipped kindergarten and went straight into first grade at age 5. He fell behind early because his mind wasn't ready for what was coming, and they said he asked too many questions that weren't related to the lesson. He was smart, but hard to teach by age 11. Once he finished during his early years, he went to Newtown High School in Elmhurst and did okay in literature and history, but never really stood out as a person. Those problems made him feel like an outsider, but they also made him pay more attention to other people. He became a great actor because of it. In 1941, Carroll left Queens for Wake. At age 17, he went to Wake Forest University in North Carolina. Things were very different in the South from the world he knew, but war broke out before he could settle down. Pearl Harbor was attacked on December 7, 1941. During early 1942, he tried to join the Naval Air Reserve but was turned down because he had bad grades. 3 of his teeth were missing, and he wasn't getting good enough grades. Back then, being a man meant serving in the military, and Carroll didn't get in, but he didn't give up. He joined the Merchant Marine Academy. But that didn't last long either. In 1943, he joined the National Maritime Union and worked as a merchant seaman. He sailed across the North Atlantic and caught. During the last few years of the war, the Caribbean and the Mediterranean were very dangerous. There were still German U-boats out there, and every trip was dangerous, but Carroll he saw the war from the water, which gave him a sense of how far away danger is. Isolation stuck with him when he played tough, worn-out characters like when Archie Bunker got home in 1946, the raw truth came out. Weren't the same. His father, who used to be a well-known lawyer in New York, was in jail. He was locked up in Sing Sing for fraud. Carroll never talked about that. It was a scandal that the family didn't talk about. They had lived a good life in Forest Hills, Queens. There was a nice house with an Irish Catholic family. Carroll was the oldest of all. 3 of his sons became doctors, and one of them died in 1961. Robert was Carroll, the psychiatrist, could have gone in the same direction as his dad and become a lawyer. He changed his mind after the war, when his family was in a lot of pain. Wasn't interested in what everyone else had. He got a job at the newspaper run by his family. Irish Advocate, the paper had been getting Irish people together since 1893. Century, Carroll wrote about events, went to Irish events, and kept his people remembered seeing him at those events with a notebook in his hand a lot. With his mother by his side. It wasn't fun, but it kept him grounded. It also helped him learn how to write and pay attention, which came in handy when he went on stage. In the late 1940s, Carroll did something else that no one expected. He enrolled at the university. Of some people say that he joined a fraternity but didn't study. His name is Montana, not Montana State. That's where he met Nancy Fields, too. She worked behind the scenes at the She was in charge of lighting, makeup, and all the other parts of student plays. They got along because she was smart, sure of herself, and focused on English and drama. Indian roots and a strong sense of history. They got married in 1951 and stayed together. They will always be together. Years later, they gave a huge gift to the university. Nancy also worked for years on building the Center for the Rocky Mountain West. Keeping a collection of more than 600 old pictures of Crow Indians taken from 1895 to 1920, her work was just as important as he packed up again in 1950, but this time he left Montana to go to Dublin. Carroll used the chance to learn more about Irish history with his brother Hugh, who was going there to go to medical school. Literature at University College Dublin. He got his degree in 1952, but something more important happened while he was there. He fell in love with theatre. On stage in Dublin, he was known as George Roberts, a quiet man. Pay tribute to a friend who had died. It was a choice that followed him as he performed in Ireland and Scotland. Shakespeare in small theatres, like the famous Gate Theatre, but he wasn't just another actor going. Through the writer's room at the 1953 Edinburgh Festival, people were impressed. One said that even when he played, his music was surprisingly modern. However, that name George Roberts didn't last. In 1954, an Irish theatre owner told him to stop. The man told Carroll that he had worked with George Roberts before and didn't want that name attached to him in his business, so Carroll gave up. That was the start of a new life for Carroll O'Connor. Under his real name, a name that would become well known in New America late that year. In Europe, people respected him. At home, they didn't. He wasn't even able to get auditions, being turned down by agents or ignored by casting directors. Stay alive, he started teaching in public schools from 1955 to in 1958, he worked as a substitute teacher in the Bronx and Queens. Who he was, but he would sometimes get their attention by putting on a Shakespeare play, which would turn the classrooms into many stages. He also went to school at the University of Montana and got a master's degree in education during this time. Was mostly about Shakespeare and American politics, but even though he had a degree, he said years later that the years he spent teaching changed him. Taught him how to talk to real people, people who would later see some of themselves in Archie Bunker. In 1958, everything changed. It all began with a newspaper. Nancy, his wife, saw a call for actors in a strange new off-Broadway play based on Ulysses Carroll from James Joyce. Didn't even want to try out. He was about to give up, but he did what Nancy told him to do, and it worked. Director Burgess Meredith gave him the role of Buck Mulligan in Ulysses in Night Town, which became a big hit. For 167 nights, critics gave praise to the whole cast, but Carroll stood out as an actress. In the end, Pauline Flanagan said that he made every scene unique. One part changed everything. After the play was over, he was offered a part in The Big Knife in 1959, and all of a sudden he wasn't hidden. Later, Carroll said, there would be no if not for Joyce and Nancy. Archie, he was ready for TV by 1960. On March 6, 1960, he made his screen debut. I took the part of prosecutor Frederick Katzman in the Seiko Vanzetti story very seriously. The role was controversial. It aired on NBC's Sunday Showcase and was seen by almost 27 million people. Talked about how deep and tense Carroll's performance was. The good and bad sides of a powerful man. Deals began to come in, and by the end of 1960, he had been in 8 TV shows. In October, he played a Russian diplomat in one show that week. In another role as a mob enforcer. His range impressed casting directors, and he was hired. He was known as the character actor's character actor because he could play almost any role. Then came the movies, even though most people didn't know his name yet. Between 1960 and 1970, Carroll played 34 small parts. His first lead role was in Fever in the Blood, 1961, he played a strict judge. Helped him get bigger parts. In Kelly's Heroes, 1970, he played a crazy-eyed general who stole every scene and made up the famous line, "Knock it off," on the spot, with those bad ways. He wasn't just playing serious roles anymore. Naturally enough. During the decade, he was in hits like Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor, was in Hawaii with Max von Sydow, and Harm's Way with John Wayne. Was almost cast in 2 major TV roles, the skipper on Gilligan's Island. Neither did Dr. Smith in Lost in Space, but by 1970 it didn't matter. Carroll O'Connor went from being a teacher no one knew to a well-known actor. He never thought he'd become one of the most recognizable faces on TV. 1968, he was cast in a pilot called Justice for All as a loathsome bigot named Archie. The network turned it down. A second pilot came in. Back in 1969, things were the same. O'Connor didn't like the script anyway. Himself, if Lear didn't like it, could find another actor. No one thought the show would make it past ABC. O'Connor moved to then, out of the blue, CBS picked it up in 1970 and changed the name to All in the Family Got a Call, and he was back. The show aired in January 1971. Ratings were slow at first, but they shot through the roof quickly and made it to number 1 in the United States, and it stayed there for 5 years straight. What made Archie Bunker do it? It wasn't just the insults or shouting that was interesting, it was the pain below. All of it. Carroll O'Connor gave the character depth. He wasn't just mad, they were lost, afraid of change, and desperately tried to hold on to a world that was falling apart. O'Connor said, "Archie's problem is how to deal with a world that is changing that made people love and hate him at the same time." Archie was the person swearing and the person crying at a funeral. By 1999, TV Guide ranked him 5th all-time. In 2005, he was number 1, beating out Lucy. The show didn't play it safe, it talked about abortion before Homer Simpson. Being gay, being racist, the Vietnam War, and even menopause and impotence. Archie spelled everything wrong, called people of color worse names, and no one had seen America Watched, even though they couldn't find anything similar on TV. By the end of season 1, it was the country's most watched show. O'Connor wasn't just brave on screen. 1972, there was a technician strike at CBS. Carroll wouldn't cross the picket line, so he shut the door. He said, "I cannot work because I've been a trade union man all my life, with people who break strikes." The network freaked out, but he stood firm. Was almost 2 months long. When it was over, he went back to his terms from the previous year. O'Connor and Norman Lear's relationship got worse. They fought over scripts, comedy, and direction. O'Connor thought Lear wasn't sure if he was telling the truth. Lear thought O'Connor was always unhappy. "It just doesn't work," he was right. It was sometimes fear, but the tension made them brilliant. Even when O'Connor skipped 3 episodes of season 5 and then quit the show, they brought him back. They had to, because the show would not have been the same without him. 1977, Carroll O'Connor made a strong demand: no more live audiences, no more taping like he wanted to make a movie and be in charge. Working with film is 80% less stressful. Film, he said, it was a big change, but the producers gave in. He had that much power, which makes him one of the most admired actors of all time. In 1979, at the 30th Emmy Awards, he won Best Actor in a Drama Series. He beat out big names like Alan Alda, Hal Linden, John Ritter, and in his speech of acceptance, Henry Winkler said, "This win only happened because of his past wins," he said, adding, "This Emmy is all I could not have won this Emmy without those other awards." What makes this even stranger is that O'Connor he first thought the show would fail. He was so sure of it that he booked a return flight to Rome in his plan to go back to Italy after the contract was cancelled. Instead, All in the Family was America's most watched show for 5 years in a row, and Archie, as the years went by, Bunker became the part that O'Connor would always remember. As the line between actor and character became less clear, Carroll O'Connor was nothing like Archie. He was a teacher, a writer, and a liberal, but no one could tell them apart. Strangers yelled, "Hey Archie," on CBS, put up ads with his picture but not his real name on the street. He told her, "People are starting to forget about Carroll O'Connor." But he never did. He didn't like the character, but he would probably like him if he met him. He felt bad for him. The first sign of peace between Lear and O'Connor after all their fights. Lear once sent him a letter about his problems. Years later, when someone came to visit, that letter was the only thing on O'Connor's desk at home. There were no trophies or anything else. Writing just that letter, proof that even the worst relationships can end with. Keep in mind that Carroll O'Connor will never get over the loss he felt in 1961. Hugh, Carroll's younger brother, died in a motorcycle accident on a rainy road, just as Carroll was starting to become an actress. To move on, the pain would never go away. When Carroll and his wife adopted a child, in 1962, they found a boy in Rome and named him Hugh to keep his in honor of her brother. This wasn't just a tribute, Carroll also kept a bond with him. He had his brother's old leather jacket and medical books in his dressing room while All in the Family was being filmed. Hugh O'Connor was only 6 days old when Carroll and his wife went to adopt him. Carroll was making the movie Cleopatra in Rome at the time she brought him home. Stars like Elizabeth Taylor and A Lot of Chaos, but nothing beat the moment he held his son because he had tried for years but failed to have children. This moment changed everything. He missed 3 days of work to spend time with his son. Was the start of something beautiful. And even when O'Connor skipped 3 episodes of season 5 and then quit the show, they brought him back. They had to, because the show would not have been the same without him. 1977, Carroll O'Connor made a strong demand: no more live audiences, no more taping like he wanted to make a movie and be in charge. Working with film is 80% less stressful. Film, he said, it was a big change, but the producers gave in. He had that much power, which makes him one of the most admired actors of all time. In 1979, at the 30th Emmy Awards, he won Best Actor in a Drama Series. He beat out big names like Alan Alda, Hal Linden, John Ritter, and in his speech of acceptance, Henry Winkler said, "This win only happened because of his past wins," he said, adding, "This Emmy is all I could not have won this Emmy without those other awards." What makes this even stranger is that O'Connor he first thought the show would fail. He was so sure of it that he booked a return flight to Rome in his plan to go back to Italy after the contract was cancelled. Instead, All in the Family was America's most watched show for 5 years in a row, and Archie, as the years went by, Bunker became the part that O'Connor would always remember. As the line between actor and character became less clear, Carroll O'Connor was nothing like Archie. He was a teacher, a writer, and a liberal, but no one could tell them apart. Strangers yelled, "Hey Archie," on CBS, put up ads with his picture but not his real name on the street. He told her, "People are starting to forget about Carroll O'Connor." But he never did. He didn't like the character, but he would probably like him if he met him. He felt bad for him. The first sign of peace between Lear and O'Connor after all their fights. Lear once sent him a letter about his problems. Years later, when someone came to visit, that letter was the only thing on O'Connor's desk at home. There were no trophies or anything else. Writing just that letter proof that even the worst relationships can end with. Keep in mind that Carroll O'Connor will never get over the loss he felt in 1961. Hugh, Carroll's younger brother, died in a motorcycle accident on a rainy road, just as Carroll was starting to become an actress. To move on, the pain would never go away. When Carroll and his wife adopted a child, in 1962, they found a boy in Rome and named him Hugh to keep his in honor of her brother. This wasn't just a tribute, Carroll also kept a bond with him. He had his brother's old leather jacket and medical books in his dressing room while All in the Family was being filmed.